Break-even point
by Justin Aceves,
Hannah Orloff,
Alejandro Rodriguez,
and John Duman.
The break-even point is a point at which the total revenue and total cost lines cross. This means that there is zero or no profit. The difference between the total revenue line and the total cost line is profit. The difference between the total cost line and the total revenue line is loss. The point lies on a CVP graph or cost volume profit graph. On the graph shown below, the smiley face represents the break-even point. It is the intersection of the total revenue line and total cost line. The profit and loss areas are shown. Moving on to CVP analysis. Cost volume profit analysis is a decision-making tool that focuses on the relationship of the units sold, prices, variable cost, fixed costs, and profit. Two of the simplest types of CVP analysis are break-even analysis and target profit analysis. There are three methods to model the relationship between revenues, costs, profits, and volume. Profit equation method, unit contribution margin method, contribution margin ratio method. We will go into further detail on each of these methods.
We now will cover the profit equation method. When using the profit equation method, it uses a similar formula in order for profit to be defined as difference between the total sales revenue, total fixed, and total variable costs. In discussing this particular method, we notice that total sales revenue and variable costs are a function of the numbers of units sold, while the total fixed costs are independent of the number of units sold. In this CVP, the cost volume profit analysis, it allows any single factor in the equation to vary while holding the rest of the equation constant. To solve for the quantity, we need to determine the number of units needed to earn our target profit or to break even. Now say we already know the numbers of units. We then can solve for the other variables that are unknown, such as the sales price needed to break even or the maximum fixed cost needed to earn a target profit. For this example, we have a furniture store and our total sales revenue is $285,000 from selling several products in our store throughout the month. As we broke down expenses for all three items, it amounted to $1,150. As variable costs, also our fixed cost happens to be $90,000 for rent, utilities, and other costs. What is the profit for the store of the month? We first start off with taking the total sales revenue and substitute the variable cost to find our contribution for both accounts. We minus $285,000 from $150,000 to get our total of contribution, which is $135,000. We then subtract our total fixed cost to a product of $90,000 for our grand total of $45,000 for total profit.
Moving on to the unit contribution method. The unit contribution margin calculates how much each unit sold contributes toward fixed cost and profit. For an example, let's use Dutch Bros. The unit selling price for a cup of coffee was $3.75, and the unit variable cost was $2. This would give us a unit contribution margin of $1.75, which would cover the fixed costs per unit, and then the remaining would be calculated as profit per unit. We found the contribution margin by subtracting sales revenue from the variable costs. Break-even point by units. The total fixed cost for Dutch Bros coffee is $14,000. The unit contribution margin must equal the fixed costs. How do you solve for the quantity of units? Divide total fixed costs by the unit contribution margin. Hence, $14,000 divided by $1.75 gives you 8,000 units. At the break-even point, 8,000 units times the price of $3.75 gives you a profit of $30,000. The unit contribution margin is also used to find the target profit. Continuing with Dutch Bros, let's say they want to make a targeted profit of $19,000. How many units would we need to sell in order to reach this target profit? You would need to make enough cups of coffee to cover fixed costs and this target profit of $19,000. To do this, divide total fixed cost, which was $14,000, plus target profit, which was $19,000, by the unit contribution margin $1.75. $14,000 plus $19,000 divided by the 1.75 equals 18,857 units. In review, take the 18,857 units and apply it to the sales revenue, variable cost, and the contribution margin. Sales revenue, which is 3.75 times the 18,857, minus variable cost, $2 times the 18,857 units equals the contribution margin. The contribution margin, which is $33,000, minus fixed cost $14,000 equals your net operating income of $19,000.
Using the contribution margin ratio, which is the percentage of sales revenue which comes from the contribution margin, we can calculate the amount of required sales revenue to reach the break-even point. For example, if Harley-Davidson's contribution margin ratio is 55%, what amount of sales revenue is needed to cover $145,000 in fixed costs, leaving them at the break-even point? On the left, we see the basic formula for calculating the break-even point using the contribution margin ratio. It reads as follows: total fixed costs over contribution margin ratio equals the break-even point. On the right, we will plug in the data values to calculate Harley-Davidson's break-even point. $145,000 of fixed costs over 0.55, which is 55%, equals $263,636.36. Therefore, Harley-Davidson must generate that amount of total sales revenue in order to cover their costs. This is their break-even point. The contribution margin ratio method can also be used to find a target profit point through a slight adjustment to the formula. For example, if Harley-Davidson, using all the same data as in the previous example, wishes to make an $85,000 profit, then how much sales revenue is needed? The new equation reads as follows: total fixed costs plus target profit over the contribution margin ratio equals target sales. We will plug in the data values on the right. $145,000 in fixed costs plus their desired $85,000 profit over 55% equals $418,181.82. Therefore, Harley-Davidson must generate $418,181.82 in sales revenue in order to achieve a target profit of $85,000.